Buonasera a tutti, benvenuti alla quarta edizione di Africa Talks. Porto i saluti della direzione del Festival del Cinema Africano d'Asia e America Latina per questa edizione, quarta edizione. Porto i saluti a tutti i nostri relatori presenti, alla moderatrice Chiara Pastore e in particolar modo al presidente della Fondazione Edu, Matteo Stefanelli, che ci ha offerto per 4 anni la possibilità di includere nel nostro festival cinematografico un appuntamento annuale di approfondimento degli aspetti più tecnologici e innovativi dell'Africa, temi di cui si parla ancora troppo poco quando ci si rivolge a questo continente. E come avete intuito dal titolo, quest'anno sono le città africane al centro dell'attenzione di Africa Talks. Voglio anche cogliere l'occasione per ringraziare Chiara Piaggio e Valentina Muti della Fondazione e Prasan Cantagno dell'Associazione COE che ci hanno accompagnato e guidato fino a qui. E come sapete anche la tavola rotonda, come il festival, era prevista a marzo dell'anno scorso e poi a poche settimane dall'inizio del festival la pandemia ha bloccato tutto e quindi siamo veramente estremamente felici di essere riusciti a mantenere il contatto con tutti i nostri relatori e di riuscire a realizzarla oggi, anche se online, però è comunque emozionante ritrovarsi tutti qui in questa in questa lobby di Zoom da varie parti del mondo. Non mi dilungo oltre, voglio lasciare la parola al presidente di Fondazione Edu. Vi ricordo solo come al pubblico che potrete prenotarvi sulla chat di NDR, quindi domande e risposte, per poi porre le vostre domande ai nostri relatori. E quindi adesso I give the floor, la parola a Matteo Stefanelli.
Grazie Alessandra, grazie davvero. Vi porto anch'io dei saluti attraverso lo schermo da parte di Fondazione Edu. Come potrete immaginare, un anno fa ci siamo un pochino interrogati sull'opportunità di inventarci una modalità, no? Per continuare il percorso che da 4 anni facciamo insieme con il festival, grazie a questi Africa Talks. E abbiamo anche per un pizzico di tempo esitato intorno al tema, no? Quando il tema della pandemia ci ha travolto, avevamo già deciso di affrontare il tema dei contesti urbani e ci siamo un attimo interrogati sull'opportunità di questo tema, però è durato poco questo dubbio, perché dal nostro punto di vista discutere di città in Africa è discutere di un tema che è un po' un prisma di tanti processi sociali, economici, culturali diversi. Quindi ci è sembrato comunque che valesse la pena continuare e proporvelo, sebbene un po' in ritardo, in questa modalità. L'idea di questa conversazione con delle splendide protagoniste del dibattito e anche dell'azione intorno alle città in Africa è che diciamo parte dalla premessa che le città, l'idea di metropoli, l'idea di città in Africa è un'idea relativamente giovane, almeno rispetto alla nostra diciamo abitudine europea. Giovane perché si sono sviluppate e si stanno sviluppando molto in fretta, con tutta una serie di difficoltà naturalmente che conosciamo e che ci illustreranno meglio i nostri ospiti. Però proprio questo essere giovani delle città e dei problemi dello sviluppo urbano per noi come Fondazione Edu è un elemento di grande sintonia, di pertinenza. Fondazione Edu si occupa di supportare la formazione universitaria di giovani studenti in alcuni paesi africani. Siamo arrivati a sostenere e a finanziare con borse di studio oltre 410 studenti a oggi, e gli studenti e gli atenei con cui collaboriamo vivono le città, soprattutto anche per ragioni appunto di studio, no? Le città sono importanti per lo studio universitario, da sempre, non solo in Africa, ma lo sono anche in Africa. E quindi, insomma, pensiamo che anche la città e lo sviluppo delle città in Africa abbia a che fare un po' con l'attività nostra di granting e di supporto all'educazione universitaria. Quindi inevitabilmente, insomma, conoscere le città è per noi un modo per conoscere meglio le esigenze formative dei nostri studenti e viceversa supportare, finanziare, sostenere atenei e studenti universitari potrebbe essere, almeno noi un po' ci crediamo, un modo per contribuire in qualche misura anche allo sviluppo delle città. Insomma, tutti questi aspetti ci hanno motivato a continuare, a offrirvi questa quarta occasione di Africa Talks, che è solo la quarta tappa di un percorso lungo, insomma, penso che continueremo a fare con gli amici del festival. E quindi io ringrazio tutti i nostri ospiti, ringrazio Alessandra speciale e tutti voi, buon proseguimento e anche buona visione dei film del festival che come tutti anche noi ci guarderemo lungo tutta la settimana. Grazie a tutti.
Ringrazio Matteo Stefanelli, presidente di Fondazione Edu. Cominciamo allora questo viaggio nelle metropoli africane. Passo la parola a Maria Chiara Pastore, ricercatrice presso il Dipartimento Architettura e Studi Urbani del Politecnico. A te la parola, Maria Chiara.
I will switch to English, and I really thank you for being here today, and a special thanks goes to Alessandra Speciale, the director of the festival, to Matteo Stefanelli, and to Association COE, which was great, and it was a long discussion that brought us here. We started to discuss about this talk already 1 year ago, and we were thinking of how to have 4 different discussion, 4 different insights of this overchanging Africa. So it was a very, very long process, and we are very happy to be here today. And we know that Africa is no one description. It's a completely different continent going from east to west. And one of the main objectives that we wanted to have with this talk was to provide 4 different stories by 4 different incredible protagonists. So we decided to have not just 4 amazing people, but also 4 different curricula and 4 different backgrounds that were going to help us to listen to this story. So we decided to have, and we invited our guest, Mayor Yvonne Akisoyer, Mrs. Rahel Scholl, Mrs. Mutinta Muniati, and Mr. Fradik. So 4 different amazing protagonists. We would like to have this talk as we will provide the floor to the 4 panelists that they provide their story. And then we will ask the audience for questions in order to kind of have a discussion. We really wanted to have a proper discussion, even if we are on Zoom. So we will ask you to interact with the panelists, and then we will discuss with them with another round of questions, and then we wrap up at 7:30 sharp. And later on, we will have the chance to see also a movie, The Great Green Wall, which is on the platform, the fescal.org festival. So I will introduce Mrs. Yvonne Sadik Mrs. Ivona Kisoyer, which is the mayor of Freetown. Good evening, Yvonne. Yvonne, she is the mayor of Freetown since May 2018, but her engagement in the public sector began with her work during 2014 and 2015 Ebola epidemic. And she got the role as delivery team lead for the second phase of the program to drive socioeconomic recovery in Sierra Leone. She's been recently recognized the BBC 2020 100 Women list. So thank you very much, Yvonne, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me and for allowing mine to be one of the stories from the 4 protagonists. So Transform Freetown is the agenda that I've come into office with, very much in respect to and in response to initially sanitation and environmental challenges. My background is that I'm not from the public sector. I'd never worked in the public sector before the Ebola outbreak. I didn't have a political background, but I suppose protagonist is the right word, because I was deeply concerned about the state of sanitation and environmental management in my city that was being negatively impacted by a rapid rate of rural urban migration. The result is that our city, which has not had proper development control, a feature of many African cities, is that our city had become an urban sprawl with overcrowding, poor housing, deforestation, and water shortages. So I ran for office in March 2018 and was sworn in as mayor in May. And Transform Freetown addresses those challenges that I've just described by working through 4 clusters: resilience, human development, healthy city, and urban mobility. And those 4 clusters have within them, or have alongside them, 11 priority sectors. Within resilience, our number 1 priority sector is environmental management. But that's closely followed by urban planning and housing, and then revenue mobilization. For a city in the 21st century to survive and thrive, it needs to be resilient. And the starting point in this era where we know climate change is such an issue is making sure that you're protecting the environment, but you're also providing housing. And importantly, there's revenue being generated so the city can be sustained in its activities and in service delivery to its residents. In the second cluster, which is human development, here we have alongside that a special lens for women and girls. I guess it kind of helps that I'm a woman. It means that as I approach the challenges that the city face, I look not only at the surface challenges, but I also recognize that there are specific issues which are exacerbated for women and that need to be addressed in our solutions. So in human capital development, we have education. The work that we do, we as the city level are responsible for primary to junior secondary school, so till about the age of 14. The next sector within that is skills development. You might know how to read and write, but if you have no skills, it can be very debilitating to get you into the job market. The third is so critical, creating jobs. And we have chosen to focus on the tourism sector. This was all done pre-COVID. And with COVID, the tourism sectors in many established tourist destinations have been badly hit, and ours was an emerging one. So as we look at job creation, we're looking now more in the area of green jobs, jobs which are linked to sanitation, jobs which are linked to the environment and climate mitigation. And the fourth sector is persons with disability, often forgotten in our cities, in the way our cities are designed and in what we do for them. So moving on then to our third cluster, which is healthy city. This has 3 sectors: health, water, and sanitation. And you may recall, as I said at the beginning, sanitation is what drove me to run for mayor, because our city was really, really challenged with very poor waste management. And the fourth cluster is also in itself a sector, and that's urban mobility, how you move around. So that's the framework of Transform Freetown. But how do we make it happen? We went through a process of engaging 15,000 of our residents when I came into office. So between July and August of 2018, we spoke to 15,000 people at zonal level, to the lowest administrative units within the communities, asking them to rate these sectors that I just described by affordability, availability, and accessibility. And for not a single one of those sectors was the council scored over 5 over 10, where 10 was very good and 0 or 1 was very poor. That wasn't a surprise because we were here to fix the problem. But I think what it helped us do was to bring our residents along with us, to ensure that there was a sense that we were going to transform Freetown together. The next step in the process was, okay, we all know it's bad and we've all agreed it's bad. Now, what do we do about it? So again, for every sector, we created these technical sector working groups, which were open platforms. In physical then, pre-COVID, we could actually meet at the mayor's parlor, and we did that over a number of months. And for each of the sectors, we put out an open call, invitations to private sector players, public sector players, whether they're ministries, departments, and agencies, or indeed NGOs, development partners, but even individuals who had an interest in the subject. And over a number of months, about 3 months, for each sector working group, we shared with them the research material available for that particular topic, whether it was health, whether it was environment, whether it was urban mobility. And then we articulated together what would be the theory of change. What could we do within the context of the term of office of the mayor that would significantly move the dial and lead to transformation? The result was us articulating 19 specific targets, and those were published to the city on the 24th of January 2019 at a big event that was televised live, and we really set targets which were concrete, which were measurable, and which effectively held our feet to the fire as a city council, because we commit to reporting on our progress on meeting those targets every year. We've just reported on our second year, and I'm pleased to say that we are making progress. And although there are elements which have been challenged by COVID, challenged by other factors, including resource availability, we have really made big strides in pretty much all of our sectors. So let me give you a sense of what those targets look like. And I also would say that in framing Transform Freetown in this way, this intersectorial, integrated urban approach with a strong degree of community ownership and involvement, and also the use of technology and performance management with our regular reporting back on where we're going. The framing of it in this way has really helped us to move further than we potentially would have done if we'd been working in silos. So for example, in environmental management, one of our key targets there is to increase vegetation cover in the city by 50% by 2022. In order to do that, among other things, we launched Freetown, the Tree Town, a plan to plant 1 million trees over 2 rainy seasons, and we are well on our way to achieving that. We've been able to, in 2020, receive funding from the World Bank, which saw us develop the system, which includes having community-based tree growers, the tree stewards, who use a tree tracker app. That's where the technology comes in to ensure that we not just only plant the trees, but we grow. So every month, the progress of the trees is uploaded onto the app, and using that app, we're able to assess the work of the tree growers. So it's created 553 direct jobs, and we are then able to make payments to those tree growers using mobile money. So you see a system which brings all those elements together: green jobs, disaster reduction, improving the environment, improving access to water, because one of the challenges of deforestation is loss of catchment areas. So in building in this way, in achieving these targets, individual targets have a positive knock-on effect on another target. I'll give another example of a target we've set. So sanitation, I'm using the two things that were the biggest issues that led me to run for office. Sanitation was a massive problem. We came in with an approach that said two things. One, our target was to increase the volume of liquid and solid waste that was being collected from 6% of liquid waste and 21% of solid waste to at least 60% for both of those. At least 60% of liquid and solid waste should be safely collected and disposed of. How have we done that? By working through the entire value chain. We place a premium on involvement of our residents. We truly believe, and I think this came from my Ebola experience, that if you want to make substantial change in any society, you can't do it as a government. You've got to do it with the involvement and the support of those with whom you're working, the residents of the city. So on the behavior change side, which is where we start, for years, there's been no waste management system. We introduced things like the cleanest zone competition to create an incentive for people to have clean environments, but you can't clean your environment without the infrastructure. So we also invested with support donor funding in what is currently now about to be 130 tricycles, micro enterprise businesses. Instead of having the big trucks collecting waste from houses, we have tricycles. And it means that we've been able to create over 1,400 jobs. Young people whose business it is now to go house to house, collect waste. And we've moved from the very, very incredibly low numbers. We only had 3,000 households registered for waste collection at the start of this exercise. We're up to over 40,000 and we're continuing to grow. But significantly as well, we're building transfer stations. We're building a sanitary landfill for the first time. And we'll be commissioning in just a couple of weeks the first ever wastewater treatment center in the city, which will deal with liquid waste. We're also working on recycling. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to give one last example of how we have this integrated approach. I said at the beginning, without resilience, there is no hope for the city. And a part of resilience is having the finances to keep investing in the city. And for that, we have introduced a digitized reform of our property rate system. We moved from having 30,000 properties on our books, manual books, to now having over 116,000 by using technology, having a satellite image over the city, using a technology system to measure the rooftops, sending enumerators out to all of those properties, using GIS codes. Now we have a comprehensive database, which is not just a database, but it links into payment systems at the banks. And so we're collecting more revenue than we've ever collected in the record time, but we're also able to demonstrate to our residents that we are using their revenue to improve their lives. So compliance has been really, really encouraging. What is our challenge? I would say our biggest challenge is the fact that urban planning and building permit issuance still does not sit with the city and still does not happen. It's like having a fire going on. You're trying to solve problems, but the fire is still raging. We need to turn the fire off, and that means having development control. But that's something that we're working on as part of Transform Freetown. Thank you very much. I think I should stop here.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And I know that at some point you will need to be disconnected. And so you were already mentioning that the urban planning issue is maybe the key challenge. Would you, I know that in this year, the magnitude of the construction of the network has been very, very important for all the cities being very, very important, not just at the national level, but also partnering among the others. What, in your opinion, are the key challenges that not just Freetown, I mean, you were mentioning about the environment and urban planning. What is the 3 most important challenges that you feel we're facing? And maybe also driving from your experience with Ebola at the begin, when you were beginning, and now we are all facing COVID. So what's the reaction on that?
So, I mean, I think for me, having been mayor for almost 3 years now, I would say that my most fundamental problem, there are many things that layer on top of each other. But for me, and I didn't know this when I started this role, but for me, urban planning, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you're fixing situations because people don't have access to water, it's because you didn't plan for them to have access to water. If you're fixing situations where women cannot get to clinics, it's because you didn't plan for them to get to clinics. If you don't plan, you will be spending more money than you need to trying to retrofit situations. And I feel that this is my biggest challenge, and probably the challenge of many, many cities. Most of what we see in Africa with the informal settlements everywhere. And of course, when you say urban planning, it is in itself something you can pull apart. You know, it's not just the mandate, it's also land rights, access to land. You know, these are all things, the building permit, the development control, but I would package it and say the fact that we have not got proper plans which have anticipated growth, which have designed for access for women, access for persons with disability, which have understood that, yes, we're going to have migration from the rural areas. How are we going to deal with it? Which have not provided affordable housing solutions, or even created an environment that can allow the private sector to come into that space. For me, this is really at the heart of many of the challenges that I see in our cities. Poor health comes from poor living conditions.
Thank you.
Poor health comes from lack of water. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And I think that there's a key issue, and Yvonne, you know, I'm an architect and an urban planner, so I'm totally with you with this importance of urban planning as a key driver for the change. I would love to listen and give the floor to Rahel Shaw, which is an architect, principal of RAS architect from Ethiopia, and she is very passionate of architecture. She has a passion for people and identity. She constantly uses architecture to bring positive impact. Rahel, she's been a fellow at the fellowship at Harvard University, Graduate School of Design, awarded the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, and she has been named among the 50 best architecture firm by Domus. And of course, I guess she can really provide insight about Addis, but on the very issue that you were mentioning, I guess. So Rahel, the floor is yours. If you want to share the presentation, or if you want us to do it, please tell us. The mic is closed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I think someone said that they would share the screen for me earlier.
Yes.
So in the meantime, I'd just like to start by thanking the organizers, yourself, for allowing me to be part of this esteemed panel. I mean, also, you put me right behind the mayor, Yvonne. It's really a privilege, but it's very hard to catch up to your amazing presentation. But I'll try my best. I'm an architect who lived all my life in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. And I grew up here. And yeah, I wanted to focus. I mean, so many challenges that the mayor mentioned are, the same in Addis and the same in almost all the cities. But what I wanted to focus on today was how our cities are part of our identities, how places, neighborhoods make us who we are. So I'll be telling a story. I'm an architect, as you said. And so, I mean, I'm a visual person. And so I want to start with this slide. What does it mean? I mean, this neighborhood is an old neighborhood in Addis Ababa. It's called Arada. this is where I grew, on the 3rd floor of that apartment building. It's a very small studio apartment where me and 5 siblings with parents and close family men, about 9 of us lived in 40 square meter of space there. But Arada is, as Addis Ababa started in 1886, it was the old marketplace. So it grew into this amazing, unique space where for us, even 40 square meters didn't hold us. We grew in the neighborhood, as you see, streetscapes, different kind of buildings from old to new to maybe the next slide can help show you with all these projects that you see. Next slide, please. Yes, you see this neighborhood. It's very quaint. It's a mixture of shops, creative spaces. We had the city hall on top of the hill. We had the churches. We have the mosques. We have all kinds of people living here. So this space growing up, and also in the backs of the streets, there were, the informal settlements that, all the, poorer people lived in tin houses and little shacks, but the whole space for all of us, it was, everybody used the space equally. So for me, growing up, it was a space that kind of made me who I am, and my thought, my processes, both as an individual, but also as an architect now, thinking about it, how inclusive the space was, how everybody could, in this neighborhood, or we call it Safar, got to live in a very close manner. So this neighborhood and this kinds of neighborhood, for example, I would call myself Arada Lij, which means a child of Arada, of this neighborhood. And so the development of the city as we go on is like this nucleuses. I mean, from the start, it's centered on the palace, and around it, there would be clusters of neighborhoods, and then for example, the church, or the houses of the nobility. So it was not a structured way. It was a very organic growth for Addis Ababa. And so you see in the development of the city that a diverse mix of people live together, structured with intricate detailing, or, as it developed into the 60s and the 70s, you can see the same way, the same organic way of development. The only kind of structure came in the 5 years of colonial Italian, when they tried to colonize Ethiopia. And so they kind of tried to separate, indigenous people. And so we have a little mark of a sense of urban planning that is, coming from this way of thinking. But otherwise, the way Addis grew is very, very mixed, is very harmonious. And so this interdependence, without any difference of actual spatial discrimination, that is prevalent, obviously, in some pre-colonial cities, is a culture of how the city developed. It means that there is cohesion between the people, rich and poor, and all kinds of people lived. Maybe the next slide. Can I have the next slide, please? So Addis Ababa continued to grow. I mean, you see that spaces like the city hall up on the left, sculptures, places of worship, mosques, the Lagar city station, or open spaces like the above, all of these avenues, they were part of how everybody, it was an inclusive city in the sense of space. So there was no, neighborhood that was exclusive, because everybody lived, had the rights of at least the public spaces. So Addis Ababa continued to be a very interesting city. It became the seat of the African Union, the European Economic Commission for Africa, the seat of that. Many internationals, nationals, people from everywhere, from all parts of Ethiopia came to this city. So it continued to be an eclectic mix of people and spaces. So the next slide though shows, this obviously Addis Ababa is not a city that is just this beautiful. I just want to show how alongside the development of the city as it started, with the nobility and then the other, the workers in tin houses, it continued to grow. And so spatial inequalities, as we see here, this is a very, very typical picture for most Addis Ababa neighborhoods, because you see apartments or high-rise buildings or nice buildings owned by people that have money, and then alongside it, everybody. So this is the inner city visual that I've had growing up all my life. So obviously what, as the rest of the city is growing inequalities in all spheres, urban poverty, dwellings in slums, neighborhoods, and informal housing, like you see, are all on top of each other. Most of them, they're built by mud and tin roofs, unequal access to infrastructure, exclusion from basic needs like sanitation, clean water. I mean, these are things that are, prevalent in most parts of the city. Unemployment, because of this, there's a lot of unemployment and illiteracy. And of course, like we all mention inequality for women in particular, access to education, and all these things are part of the urban poverty. The next slide shows how, though, through all these challenges, there is this important value system that I see, and this is my opinion, that are unique to the city because of this indigenous, in a way, informal and always mixed way of building. The way neighborhoods developed was instrumental in social cohesion, making Addis Ababa to have its very unique identity. So proximity for all residents to the inner city, because the inner city, before urban transformation and growth, everybody could live in the inner cities. So the next slide shows urbanization comes. What happens? So can you show me the next slide? So in the last 2 decades, urbanization and transformation, we know growth is very, very important, but our buildings have grown higher. It is, the inner city are being densified. So what happens is, obviously, the inner city residents are taken out from and given big infrastructure and are allowed to live in big infrastructures. Housing, if you see this, the next slide, large-scale construction projects, housing, extensive expansion. Can you show me the next slide? Sorry. In hundreds and thousands of housing projects were developed. This, you see, is the infrastructure now in the outskirts, because like, the mayor said, there's challenges, you try to do infrastructure, then it gets congested, then there's traffic issues. So the next slide shows how the government has tried to mitigate, for example, housing issues by developing, social housing in hundreds and thousands. So in the last 20 years, 2 decades, these infrastructure projects have grown. So next slide kind of shows this growth challenges. Although we believe growth is necessary, lack, city infrastructure and urban planning strategies. Because of this lack of, there is problems of mobility, safe passages in neighborhoods, especially to youth and women, and then transportation, lack of green spaces, etc. I mean, so many challenges. The next slide shows what eradicating neighborhoods means for, because redevelopment of big, huge infrastructures means that we're destroying this cohesive community. If you go to the next slide, you'll see how this means it's a challenge, because we are excluding vulnerable and poor communities. We're taking them out of the city and trying to, obviously develop a global city that is, in a way against, our identity. So here is our city. I mean, this is the city of Addis Ababa. I cannot say all the challenges and in so few minutes. But for me, the last slide says, what do we do? What can we do? I mean, what are we doing? So for me, and this is my personal, we want to develop, you see the old city and then the new city. We can reimagine a transformation of Addis Ababa based on values of inclusion, mixing and integration to be equally enjoyed by all. We can continue to reclaim our traditional knowledge and ideas of city building based on urban design that is people-centered, participatory process, involving all stakeholders, government, residents, communities, professionals, everyone. We can rebuild community culture through creating mixed use, inclusive spaces, creating and sustaining green infrastructure for a healthy city, and for spaces where shared identity celebrations are enjoyed by all. We should not demolish our heritage buildings and spaces, as these are part of our histories and our memories of place. Our city, based on our own values, recreating our identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rahel. I think that this journey in Addis Ababa has been amazing, and I really love to be here, and I really there, and I'd really love that we would be together at this moment to share this.
Thank you.
I would like then to enter. I think that you touch one specific issue, which is this balance on the amazing growth from one side, and on the other side to provide the local identity. To whom also? Well, this is also a very important issue, as we all know that African cities are young. The age of the African city is the average age is very, very small, considered the percentage of our old city, for example, in Europe. The average is 20 years old, which is a very incredible potential from one side, but it's also a huge challenge to be channeled on the other side. And with this incredible question, what is with the younger generation, I would introduce Mutinta Munyati, which is Zambian by origin, and currently working as a project management specialist at UN Habitat. She's the responsible for coordinating the regional office for Africa strategic planning processes and cross-cutting issues, including youth and gender. She's been working for the past 20 years on issues related to policy and program development, including setting up youth development globally and in Africa. I really think that Mutinta is going to bring a very key component of the transformation of the African cities, particularly for considering gender and youth as a key components also in the discussion that already Yvonne and Rahel brought with us. Mutinta, the floor is yours. And do you want us to share, or you will share? I don't know which is the arrangement.
Maybe it will be faster if you share.
You share.
If you share, I'm trying to share.
Okay. Can somebody share, or?
Oops. Somebody sharing, or should I share?
I can share, Mutinta. You can go. Or...
Okay.
But you should close it up so that we can do it.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes. Maybe whilst they're doing that, I can just begin giving a bit of background. And I like the fact that I'm coming after the mayor, Yvonne, and Rael. Nice to meet you.
Can you see my screen, right?
Yes, I can see your screen, yes. I would like to build on the discussions that have been presented so far and give you my perspectives, having worked with young people for 20 years and also working in UN Habitat. Some of the issues that have been highlighted in relationship to cities and planning and congestion and climate change, issues of water and sanitation, all those are issues that I've been able to work with from the perspective of young people. So if we can begin by looking at the background, as it has been said, there's profound changes in urbanization in Africa. Whether we like it or not, cities are going to urbanize, and people will move from rural areas to urban areas. And most of the people who are moving actually to urban areas are young people. And we know why they're moving to urban areas. It's because of the very issues that we've been hearing. That's where the opportunities are, that's where the jobs are, and that's where they can make a living. So if you look at the world today, in terms of population, there's a large percentage of young people that are living that are young people. The world is made up of a lot of young people. And most of them are living in developing countries, yeah? And also what I wanted to highlight is with this bulge in cities, it also, the emergence of the pandemic showed us how actually we need to make a new business model for planning of African cities, especially involving young people. We noticed from the pandemic when it hit, we realized that really some of the models that have been existing do not respond to pandemics like COVID-19. So we need to look at how that can change. Let me have the next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, and also to mention that, the fact that Africa is urbanizing, it's a powerful asset and it should be seen as an asset. But the cities have to be properly planned and adequately serviced, as the previous speakers have said, because if people are moving to urban areas and they are not able to access housing, they're not able to access sanitation, our cities are usually unplanned for the amount of people that are coming in. And that's why we end up having all these informal settlements that are, clogged with people, because the cities have not prepared for this influx of population. So it's very, very important that, begin to look at how cities are planned. And also we need to really specifically look at, because our continent is very youthful, what is the role of young people in developing the continent? Which takes me to the next slide in terms of the role of young people. We have seen the role that young people can play. When COVID hit, I saw a lot of young people really mobilizing in action and coming into action. Most of the activities that we saw, you just saw young people swing into action. And this is how this resource can be, mobilized, whether COVID or no COVID. How can we ensure that, the youth resource that we have in our cities is tailored or, organized in a way that it can contribute positively in the cities? The number of activities that I saw ranging from, Ghana, from Nigeria, from Mozambique, Zambia, everywhere, the young people came up with innovations, to be able to address the issues within the pandemic, which means that they have, the energy, they have the resilience, they have the capacity to be able to innovate if only they are given the chance. But at the same time, we saw that during COVID, challenges such as young people losing their livelihoods, and their sources of income. And also, most of all, they were not able to go to school. So these are things, some of the things that also brought into focus, how are we prepared for, responding to these issues? And, it's very sad to say that, for example, during the time of lockdown, some of the young girls were really, really impacted. Some of the stories that I was hearing and talking to young people, you just begin to ask yourself, what are we going to do with this generation that has not been able to go to school? Some of the young girls were, they got pregnant, they are not able now to be able to go back to school. That is a challenge that, governments and the partners have to look at. What are we going to do with this? Is it a lost generation? Or what do we do with this, group of young people? The next slide, please. Now I'm just going to look at 3 challenges, which I'll look at in terms of also what we need to do to be able to address those challenges. The issue of youth employment, I think the mayor has already alluded to that. There's a mismatch between education system and the type of labor market. It's saturated. It's unable to take, the amount of young people that come out of the school system. But the private sector also, the private sector base is a little bit on the lower side. The other issue that we need to look at is the mindset of young people always, and I know I've said this even at a personal level when I'm engaging with young people. We can no longer look at the possibilities of white collar jobs, but also how do we change the mindset so that young people look at other skills, for example, vocational skills, in a way that, they are not looked down upon. And I think this is the problem, because if you do vocational training, which also makes money, by the way, because depending on what value addition you make to the kind of products that are produced, a lot of young people also have been able to thrive in that sector. The next slide. The other challenge I saw, and it was so prominent during the pandemic, was the issue of the digital divide. We know that there has been an improved access to technology. Internet is there, and mobile infrastructure is there. But at the same time, do young people have the capacity to be able to access the infrastructure? It is there, yes. But what I've noticed also, some of the challenges is that the internet is expensive, and in some places it's not even available. And I personally, during COVID, had ended up in one of the cities where it was almost difficult to work because the internet was not very reliable. But now, if you look at young people, it's even more Western, to be able to access this kind of facility. The next slide, please, which is looking at, how do we, the private sector is very crucial in terms of poverty reduction, but how can the private sector be facilitated to be able to provide that enabling environment? I think we cannot turn a blind eye to the private sector. It's the future of the African cities, but the question is how do we work with the private sector? They have their own ways of operating, but within that environment, how can we ensure that young people look to the private sector as an employer? The next 3 slides. Now, the key drivers are really connected to the challenges that I've outlined. Africa needs to connect. And this is the only thing that can drive Africa. We need to connect. This will drive mobility, and this will drive the expansion of markets. And we've seen it. I've worked with a program called the Africa Youth Connect program, how young people are connecting, not only in Africa, but also in Asia, in terms of innovations, in terms of the South-South cooperation, where they're exchanging information and ideas. So they need to connect. And also, there are some outstanding policies that are in place that need to be enhanced, like the Africa continental trade policies. They are there, but how can they be made more, user-friendly by young people? I'll give an example. For example, in the Great Lakes region, one time young people were saying, look, we know that this policy does exist, but the different policies at the national level and local level do not allow them to be able to trade within, with each other. There's a policy, yes, it says you can trade between the Great Lakes, but when it comes to reality, each national has its own regulations on how this can be done. So those are some of the things that one would need to look at and see how can they be standardized to be able to support, this process. The second one is, next slide, please, sorry. Digitalization, like I've mentioned, and here I just wanted to highlight how it has really facilitated, for example, retail payments, financial inclusion. And I want to give an example here. For example, in Kenya here, you can pay through a mobile phone, young people can be able to access the loan through mobile phone. How can this be the norm rather than, the exception? And also, how can this be facilitated in terms of the infrastructure? Because we've seen that it really works, but how can it be made accessible more easily? And we also know that young people are a large percentage of, mobile subscribers to this facility. So how do we ensure that, it supports this digital transformation in Africa? The last one is, next slide, please. Adapting policies and frameworks that work. We know that in Africa, we have quite some very good policies, but what I realize is that sometimes the policies do not match the pace at which youth development moves. So one of the lessons that I wanted to bring to is that the policies need to be revised so that they are in line with the, with the youth challenges. And also one of the issues that came very clearly during the work that I've been doing with young people is that young people are not part of the monitoring of the policy and implementation. And that's why sometimes the policies do not, they're not as effective as they could be. The last slide is just my conclusion, and I know that I have less time. We need to recognize young people as a resource and not as a problem. And also, how do we utilize the lessons that we've learned from COVID? And lastly, how can young people contribute to the socio-economic response recovery plans that, from the practical experiences that we have seen during COVID, so that we can see how to build back better. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mutinta. It has been, I think, incredibly interesting, but also I think that so far the three presentations have been very much impinging one on the other on very key focal points. And I would now give the floor to our last panelist, Fradik, which is a film director and very much linking this panel to the greater basket, which is the Festival of African, Latin American and Asia Festival. Fradik is one of the most talented and expressive voices in the Angolan contemporary cinema. Has been graduated in the US in cinema. One of the founders of the production company, Gerasao, writes, Fradik, 80.
Yes.
He directed Allambamento in 2010 and the documentary Independence in 2015. This movie was screened at the different international film festival and won the Angola National Culture Prize for cinema. He has just finished the first fiction film, Air Conditioning 2020, that is going to be, it has been premiered at the Rotterdam International Film Festival this past 2020, and which is currently among the movies that we can see in this festival. Fredrik is going to, as you already seen, these panelists and protagonists of the talk are showing us a very unique perspective, and I'm very happy to give the floor to Fredrik, who is going to show Luanda as his discussion point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. It's a great honor to be part of this amazing panel, and it was amazing to hear the presentation by Mayor Yvonne and Jael and Mutinda. It's always in these kind of encounters that we see that our African cities have so much in common and are dealing with the same issues, that it's very important, like Mutinda was saying, that it's important that we are connected and we share with each other information. I will start these presentations. I'll be showing some photographs that were taken by this amazing street photographer from Angola called Rui Magalhães. He was the photographer that was with us during the shooting of our film, Air Conditioner. And I decided to show these photographs not only because they show how and where we shot the film, and a little bit to talk about the city of Luanda, because Luanda is a very important character in the film Air Conditioner. And I decided to start with this first photograph where we see a woman wearing a t-shirt called Art is Resistance. And it's interesting because while listening to Mayor Yvonne talking about resilience, and at the same time listening to Jael talking about neighborhoods, I felt that everything on the film Air Conditioner has some, it speaks a lot to those presentations. So bear in mind that I'll be going through the photographs. I'll try to go as quick as I can, and at the same time so you guys can see some of the photographs. That all these photographs were taken while we were shooting the film. So Air Conditioner is a film that takes place in downtown Luanda, in that building, in that green building that you guys can see over there. And downtown Luanda, it's a very particular place because we have this beautiful bay with a lot of new buildings that have been built in the last 15 years, 15, 20 years since our civil war ended. And it's interesting because all those buildings are very, I normally say Dubai wannabe, you know, a lot of glass, skyscrapers, and kind of pushing the old town away. And for me, it was important with this film, Air Conditioner, to show the old buildings, to show the street behind these new skyscrapers that are pushing the town away. And because I've lived in these buildings, I'm still living in these old buildings. I lived in different, I think now 5 or 6 different buildings all my life in downtown. And not only me, but the director of photography, the composer of the film, most of the crew. So we really wanted to tell a story that took place in this kind of environments. So downtown it's a very busy place, and those buildings are kind of weird in the sense of it still has a mesh of classes, you know. You can see a very 1-bedroom apartment with no kitchen and even no bathroom, because this building in particular where we shot Air Conditioner was a very old hotel during the colonial times, and the bathrooms were outside. And so it was a shared bathroom. So people start building their own bathrooms inside and their own kitchens. So you can have apartments like this one. This is just one room where you see a single father with his child. We shot in this exact room. And then at the end of the hallway, in this same hallway, you see, you know, a 2-bedroom apartment that, you know, broke into other apartments and has this big flat screen, and it's completely different people living in the same building, you know. At the same time, like I said, people started doing their own, when you see those things on the floor, people start doing their own sewage systems. And this is not happening not only in this building, it's happening in many buildings, old buildings in downtown Luanda. And other things that I would like to show is how the texture of these buildings are. Like here we see the brick wall of the elevator shaft. Most of the elevator shafts on those buildings are closed because they became completely trash cans or people were trying to live there. So some of those buildings decide to close down. Also, there are, besides of the old dust that you see in these old colonial buildings, there in the walls, I think you see the different generations that went through, and you can see a lot of writing that young kids do. And I think it's also something that preserves and has memory, you know, and that's something that really interests me as well. Now, I'll go through some of the people that live in the building and actually became part of the crew. Here we see Tito speak. Tito is a kuduro artist and also someone that works in a building, is a person that does different things as washing cars, carrying groceries, a lot like the main character in the film, the security guard Matacedo. And he was someone that has a very gentle soul, and he was part of the crew and also became one of the actors. He's an amazing actor. Here we see Dona Maria, which is her and her sister are the two ladies that are in the back part of the building, and they cook to a lot of the workers and a lot of the people that work in the building in the neighborhoods. I'm going to start going a bit faster now. So I really want you guys to see some of the photographs, because for us, making this film was not only coming with our crew. We wanted to build a community as well, because this building opened the doors for us to shoot the film. And that was very important for us. And because we didn't want to just go there with our actors, we use also non-actors. And the other thing is, and this is very important for us, was we wanted to share the film at the end. And that's why I'm going a bit fast, so I can show you some of the photographs when we share the film towards the end of the film. And here, let me go faster. Okay, so here at the end, after we finish shooting the film, we show the film in the rooftop to the people in the building, to friends, and to the crew. And that was a very important part of our project. And at the same time, a year after, with another collective of street artists called Vecron, they built a mural in one of the old buildings in downtown. And that was important for us. It's something that we still want to keep doing, because downtown, the only images that you see are commercial images of promoting drinks or products, and culture is not really taken into consideration when it comes to the city. So we decided to do that on our own. And at the same time, with other projects, we are trying to rehabilitate old cinemas, because one of the things that we have an issue here is that our multiplexes only screen American films, and we want to see more Angolan films and more African films. So at the end of this whole presentation, I really like to go back to the first photograph where we talk about art being resistance, and very important to keep doing it, even when the means are not the best. It's very important to build a community. It's very important to make art in your neighborhood, and that's it. Thank you
so much, Fredrik. I think first of all, the images are wonderful. So it's been an emotional journey for all of us, I guess, into the city, and really, I think that it's a very good way of capturing our eye, and invite us to also watch the movie Air Conditioner. And there are a number of questions, and I will be happy to moderate the questions, and also to provide some of the comments. Tiziana says, I'm very proud to see that there are a number of women, sorry, Fredrik.
No.
Protagonists for the future. My question is, if you women, as women, have been some challenges to bring forward your work. Rahel, Mutinta. Brief questions. So what's the do you want me to go ahead with the question, and maybe then you can answer to a few of them? So I will read some of them. Gianpaolo Nuvolati says, in Italy we have a kind of urban polycephalic system. That means many medium-sized cities. Do you think that to reduce the concentration of the population in only one large city, as it seemed to be in Ethiopia, could be a solution in order to improve quality of life and identity of the population? This is to Rahel. Again, Marcello Balbo for Rahel. It is certainly a good idea to try to base planning choices on identity. However, my question is what identity means in a city like Addis, where many different population, professions, income level live together. Don't you think it's hard, maybe impossible, to identify one identity? Sorry for the repetition. The social housing you showed is certainly affordable to only a small portion of the population living outside the many low income and poor who inhabit Addis. Identity, community, inclusion are slippery notions. I go ahead with the question so that we can then answer to the specific issue. Mathieu Ngoa. My first question is to Mrs. Yvonne, which I believe that she left, I'm sorry. Mathieu is also going to Mrs. Rahel. It was a pleasure to see something from Addis Ababa, which I never visited apart from the airport. We know that most of the African cities were built around the beginning of 20th century, where then there were inhabitants and a couple of cars. Nowadays, the cities are overcrowded with thousands of hundreds of cars, if not millions. That causes a problem to viability. To move in towns within 5 kilometers, we need 2 hours and even more. How could such a problem be faced? And then Mrs. Mutinta, with the high rate of joblessness that we have in Africa, how can the youth contribute to the development of the towns? Sandra Federici says to architect Rahel, how do you see the Chinese primacy in Africa in the creation of infrastructure, particularly to Addis Ababa? If there are studies and how these interventions are perceived by the citizens. Mita Bertoldi, what is local identity, Rahel, in Addis? And the last one is from Time for Africa. Sorry, it's in Italian, so I'm translating in the meantime. Young cities certainly are developing models which are coming from the western part. considering the infrastructural deficit and economical deficit, is there any idea of an African city that reflects the culture, the issues, the cultural bid and the social bid? Maybe Fradik, and I would definitely provide the floor. Rael, do you want to start?
Yes. First of all, I think I just want to say, and I talked about this to Frederick, to Maria Carrea when we started, because I'm not an urban planner, and the issues in Addis, I mean, and in most African countries, I don't think I can even be answering any and most of these questions, but I'll try, like a resident. I mean, and unfortunately, an architect works in a compound. I mean, I always say, I feel like it's a very small part of what I do. But anyway, all the small buildings in the end become a city. So we're all responsible for what we do. As a woman, I mean, just quickly, yeah, it has been a challenge. It's been, but again, as I said, the way I grew and the way, you know, I think families and friends and who support system for me, and also mentorship system when I was in the school helped. And of course, resilience, being an African woman, an Ethiopian woman, is always not easy, but I don't want to stress the point of how I navigated 30 years of my career as an Ethiopian, as an Ethiopian woman, but it needs strength. And that's why, I mean, maybe more of the work I do is empowering and working with young people, because, and especially women in my profession in the construction industry. So that kind of helps support also my need to bring some change and for very disadvantaged women, especially also in our construction industry. So it is hard, but I have persevered, and it's possible, but we have to continue the work. It's not easy. When it comes to issues of identity, I think what I wanted to specifically address here was, I know that identity is something that every one of us are even afraid to say now. What I'm talking more is the spatial things that, like even Frederick mentioned a bit, how spaces form us as human beings. I mean, Addis Ababa, because of the mixed way and the very, it was not intentional, it was organic, but that is somehow the culture of the city. You can have very rich people and big skyscrapers, as you saw. If you saw some of my slides, it shows small buildings, you know, that were designed and built a long time ago. So in a way, there is coherence. And for me, if you come, and many people who come to Addis also always have this question, it is a vibrant city. I mean, the issue is, you know, everyone, again, it's different. When I go to, for example, some parts of Africa, there is a spatial divide that is very visible. So what I'm talking about is when I say identity, yes, Addis has a very local, unique identity of a mixed and coherent sense of space. It is not that people are the same. They don't have the same access to many things. There is inequality. There is a lot of things. But when we talk, we do not talk about the east side of Addis and the south side of Addis. We talk about neighborhoods, Arada, Mercato, you know, Kabana. I think these are very unique in a city, and that has made, for me, a very unique connection to the place. So that's what I call identity, and that's what I feel many people have, but it's a very personal opinion again. The other question is about mobility. I mean, somebody said it in the question. For example, I lived in the center of the city all my life. I grew there. in Arada, which is also called Piazza after the Italians' occupation. So, and then after I got married, I moved to the outskirts of the city where I live now in the peripheries in the east of Addis. And it takes me an hour and a half to go to work to the inner city. So it is a problem. Mobility is a problem. And I have a car, you know. Imagine all these people who are waiting on lines for an hour and a half to get transportation to work or marketplace. So there's, you know, urbanization and the fast growth. The growth is very fast. I don't think you will realize in Europe what this means. In the last 15, 20 years, Addis has grown 25, 30% in breadth. So, but it hasn't, like Mayor Yvonne said, it's not well studied. There was no time to do, you know, amazing master plans and, you know, to connect all these people. So that is why we see congestions, we see problems of mobility, we see also divides in a way, because slowly, you know, gated communities are coming, high-rise buildings are coming, and there are people like myself who want to see this coherent, mixed way of, you know, which is our way of life. I don't know if I didn't answer the Chinese infrastructure. Again, a big question. I mean, what do I think of it? I mean, they're, yeah, on the positive side, they're doing good work. I mean, as a resident, I see they're doing infrastructures very fast. And then on the other side, there might be other issues. You know, this is the state or the government or politicians or policymakers have to answer that. I'm a resident, so I have my bit of my reservation personally, but obviously they're doing a lot of work, and I'm happy also that developments are happening, because, you know, not only Chinese, other contractors and people are coming. So thank you.
Rahel. Mutinta, do you want to go ahead with the question on the young perspective?
Yes, I just want to mention that one way of addressing this issue, and I've seen it working in cities, is the issue which I mentioned in terms of innovation, that young people really need to think outside the box. For example, if you look at the issue of solid waste, we have seen how young people have been able to come up with innovative ways of collecting waste and turning it into wealth. So the opportunities are there. I think it's just how do we change, one, the mindset of young people to begin to look at other options other than, you know, and of course, there's always pressure from parents and from mentors. You have to be a doctor, you have to be an architect, you have to be, imagine when a young person says they want to be an artist or they want to be a musician, you know, the initial reaction, and I'll tell you for me, like, for example, the initial reaction would be, you know, in Africa, art will not bring you income, will not bring food on the table. But then how can you turn it, the mindset to say, how can you support the young people to use art as a source of revenue or a sort of income, you know, because it's possible. It's just how innovative we can be. And I think this is where the issue of connections also comes in. How do you connect with other young people in other places to be able to see how this connection can be able to support you know, young people. The other issue that I wanted to mention is the issue of young people have to know how to grab opportunities that when they come. And I want to give an example. In some cities, there's a policy that says that the procurement by a city, 30% has to go to young people. But if as a young person, you don't have that information that you can actually be able to bid and be able to provide the kind of procurement that that city needs, then you'll not be able to do it. But if you know, you have the information and you look for how can I take advantage of, you know, this opportunity that has been given by the city. And we've seen it work through some of the programs that we have been working with the municipalities, where we were training young people on how to prepare proposals for this kind of thing, to be able to bid, for example, for procurement, or to be able to to bid for proposals. So the issue is, how do you provide that space where you can mentor young people in terms of changing of the mindset, and also to be able to stop, waiting for, things to be given. You have to go and grab them. Just like as a woman, you don't expect things just because, I'm a woman, things will fall in place. You have to be aggressive. You have to go for it. And I think this is why we've been able to, well, at least that's why I've been able to manage to be able to be where I am. Otherwise, I think those are the sentiments that I would just like to share for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutinta. It's the same in Italy, don't worry. It's I deeply share this thought. And I would give the floor to Fradik for the question. Specifically the one, there is a city you think that an African city that respect the culture, the issues, the cultural links, the social. I know it's wide question, but I think you would provide an important overview of that. And also there's one question by Celine Camoin, sorry for the pronunciation.
Okay.
Could you say a few words about the Musek in Luanda, and what about the future of these kinds of neighborhood in big towns?
Okay.
And there's also a comment, è compreser che veo angolano è un panel con un tema molto importante para o futuro de África. And my Portuguese is very, very bad, so.
It's perfect, don't worry. I didn't get very well the first question. So
The Musek in Luanda?
No, oh, okay, the first one. So that one, I think one of the big issues is like Luanda right now, it's a city with 8 million people. And it's a city that if you think, and I showed the images of that beautiful marginal, which has like Dubai wannabe buildings, the city thinks a lot about that downtown part. And that downtown part, it's not even close to 1 million people. So there's 7 million people there. People are not thinking about it. And those people live in those neighborhoods that the person asking the question. And I think we should start, our public servants and government should start thinking about more about the majority of the people in terms of infrastructure, in terms of access, in terms of education, in terms of we are going through a big crisis of sewage and trash right now in the city. I think it's the biggest since I'm alive. I can't remember the worst one. So I think it should be a priority. It shouldn't even be how to deal with this kind of neighborhoods. It should be the main concern of public service and government right now. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Fradik. And I'm wrapping up as we are now going to end up this talk. And I would like to express my gratitude to all of you, which has been so kind to share your perspective. And I also think that these images have been really providing us the idea of the complexity of the African cities, and this brings me to the link of the festival, which is I had the pleasure to see a few movies from the amazing choice that the African Festival is providing, and I really think that this is so important to have a perspective which is from a European point of view. It's very hard sometimes to grasp and to gather in our day. And I would like to remind you that tonight we have the opportunity to see The Great Green Wall, which is a movie by Jared Scott. It's available for free at the platform Fescal. And I really encourage you to see it, because it's an amazing and super important movie about the Coast to Coast Africano. And I give the floor to Alessandra Speciale, sorry. Alessandra Speciale to wrap up. Thank you so much.
Grazie Maria Chiara. Concludo brevemente con un ringraziamento generale a tutti i nostri panelist, la loro generosa e interessantissima i loro generosi e interessantissimi interventi, anche le immagini che ci avete regalato, molto, molto belle. E ricordo appunto il film che segue il format Africa Talks ormai da 4 anni. Ricordo anche il film di Fradiche domani a partire dalle 14, sempre sulla piattaforma di My Movies. Mi dispiace che Yvonne è dovuta partire prima, avrei voluto salutare anche lei. E questa vostra conversazione è stata vista in streaming su Facebook e sarà comunque fruibile ancora su Facebook durante tutto il periodo del festival. Io penso che me la riascolterò volentieri, perché durante il festival si riesce difficilmente a concentrarsi, ma ho comunque seguito con grande piacere. Vi ringrazio e a presto, magari con un altro panel, un prossimo incontro sulle città. Grazie.
Thank you to all of you also for being listening to us. We have a great number of people listening, more than 200 people were connected. So we really thank the audience for this interesting opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Alessandra e Matteo. Ciao, Mutindo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Bye.
Pleasure.